Hello everyone, and we are glad to see you on the first lesson of our motion design course. On this lesson, we're gonna fight the fear of complicated After Effects interface, set it up for our needs, and of course we will create a simple animation. So let's start! First of all, launch After Effects and set our workspace to Standard. For that, go to Window, Workspace, Standard. If your standard don't look like mine, just go to Window, Workspace, and select Reset Standard to save layout. So now we are on the same page. If you don't have one of these panels or accidentally closed it, don't worry, you can always find it and switch it on in Window menu. You can easily move, undock and dock the panels, group them, and you also can save your own workspace presets. For this, go to Window, Workspace, and select Save as New Workspace, or edit existing workspaces by clicking Save changes to this workspace. Let's have a look at the basic panels. We will start from File menu. There is nothing complicated about this panel. You can create, open, close, save, and so on. But we have to pay special attention to item dependencies. It's not available for now. We have to import any file inside After Effects to make it available. So for this, double-click on Project panel, select any file you want, and press Import. Now we can go to File once again and see that the dependencies is available. And here, Command Collect Files is important for us. This command will save the copy of the project to separate folder with all used images, sounds, and footages. It will provide you normal working process in case you have to move the project to another computer. In Edit menu, you can do all basic operations like copy, paste, duplicate, and find main preferences of program. But one of the most important items here is Purge all memory and disk cache. Sometimes After Effects starts to work really slow or renders some irrelevant frames, and this menu item usually helps. Composition. Here we have composition settings. From this menu we can also send our composition to render queue. In Layer menu we can find different layer settings. Most of them are duplicated in Layer context menu, so let's move further. Effect. It is a library of powerful effects. We have separate panel with all these effects and search as well. That's really useful, but we will talk about this panel in further lessons. Animation. A big part of animation menu is represented in timeline context menus, so let's keep this as well. View panel contains different view settings like guides, zoom-in, snapping, and so on. In Window menu, you will find all available panels, including scripts and extensions. The next important panel is Project. It contains all the files, layers, and compositions used in your project. Here at the top is a small preview window with little information about selected item. Here at the bottom, buttons which will allow you to create new folder or new composition, and you can also delete selected items using this button or just by hitting delete. By pressing here, you will open Color Project Settings. Here we can set up color depth and working space. You can go to Project Settings this way: Project, Project Settings. As you can see, we have here a lot of different preferences. To add the file to your project, you need to import it to the Project panel. You can do this by double-clicking on an empty area of this panel, or by pressing Ctrl-I, or just by dragging your file from the Explorer window. Work in After Effects should be always started with creation of new composition. Composition is like an artboard or canvas in Photoshop, but with a timeline. We can create composition by clicking this icon on a project panel, or by going to Composition, New Composition. Let's name it First Comp, dribble shot size 800 by 600, frame rate 30, and duration 5 seconds. As you can see, composition is now displayed in Project panel, on our viewport, and Timeline. Now we can create new layers and objects using Tools panel. Tools are divided in several groups. The first three tools are the same as in Illustrator or Photoshop. Selection tool, Hotkey V, allows you to select the items. Hand tool allows you to move your workspace. You can activate it by holding spacebar. And Zoom. You can activate it with your mouse scroll. Rotation tool rotates object around its anchor point. The next is a camera control tool. Hold the left click to see the full list of its instruments. Pan behind tool controls the object's anchor point position. Anchor point is a point around which all transformations happen. Next three tools are quite typical for most graphic edit software: Shape tool, Pen, and Text. We will get back to other tools later. So the last two panels are the most important. This is where all magic happens. I will create a simple shape just for demonstration. And let's have a detailed look at Viewport. Preview of our work results is available in Viewport. You can see the name of the open compositions here, and there is a set of buttons on the bottom of the panel. Let's have a closer look at the most important of them. Let's start from this drop-down. It controls scale of image in Viewport. This one is responsible for visibility of different grids. Turn on and off shapes paths visibility. Jump to current time of composition. Camera makes screenshots. And its neighbor allows you to compare screenshots with other frames. This drop-down is really important. It controls the quality of image in Viewport. When After Effects starts to work slow, try to reduce this option. If you want to render current region, push this button and select the region you want to render. This one is for transparency visibility control. The next is a switch between different views, really helpful when you work with 3D scenes. Using this drop-down, we can show several views. Let's review a timeline. It is separated in two parts. Left part contains layer lists and their parameters. You can control visibility of a layer, lock them, isolate them, and so on. Right part is an actual timeline. Here we will be animating layers properties. We can control our work area on a timeline to render just a piece of time we are working on at the moment, and you can do this by dragging edges of work area, or just using hotkeys B for beginning of a timepiece and N for an end. We can scale the timeline just by using mouse scroll and holding Alt. So after a quick review of interface, let's dive in and create a simple animation of a cursor clicking the button. Create new composition, 800 by 600, 30 frames per second, and duration 2 seconds. Now draw the button using rounded rectangle tool. Turn on the grid and draw it in the center of composition. Hold Ctrl to draw it from the center. OK. Select Text tool and write any phrase you want. Set the size and color of our text in character menu and make all letters caps. Press Y for Pen Behind tool and move the anchor point to the center. To enable snapping, hold Ctrl. Then import the cursor icon, select footage in this drop-down, and drag it on timeline of our composition. Right-click, create shapes from vector layer, and cursor is fully recreated in After Effects. We don't need an Illustrator file anymore. Press Y for Pen Behind tool and correct the cursor anchor point position. Now it's time to animate. Press V for Selection tool and drag cursor to its initial position, the place where it will appear from. Select icon layer, open it up, transform top, and select Position property. Click the clocks icon so that we have created keyframe, and let's move 10 frames further and move cursor to its clicking position. As you can see, there is a line between two positions. It is a movement path. We can edit it as well, and the second keyframe was automatically created. Let's move 25 frames further and create one more keyframe by clicking this romb icon. Then 10 frames further and move cursor to its final position, somewhere out of the screen. So the base of our animation is ready. Press spacebar or 0 on a numpad to watch the result. Now let's understand what we have done. Using 4 keyframes, we fixed position of our object in different moments of time. From first frame to 10th, position value is changing from this one to this one. Then we made a pause in movement by adding new keyframe with the value of previous keyframe to make object stop in this position for 25 frames, and then moved it to its final position. Let's create an animation of click, scale, and add 3 keyframes with interval of 3 frames, with values 100, 85, and 100. So let's do the same stuff with button. Check if the keyframes are placed on the same position as cursor on the timeline. And it's obvious that our text also have to scale down when click is happening, so just copy keyframes from button and paste it in Scale property of text. So let's make our button a little bit transparent at the moment of clicking. Let's create keyframes on opacity 100, 85, and 100. And the last thing we need to do is create a hover and make our button have brighter color when mouse is over it. Open up the contents of the button, rectangle, find fill, and parameter color. Find the moment of the time where cursor starts overlapping the button. Create a keyframe, move 2 frames further, and change our color to one that's brighter. Then move to the moment where cursor starts to go away and make a keyframe. Few frames further, copy the first keyframe and paste it here. Press space or 0 on a numpad to watch the result. Let's improve our animation by editing speed graphs. Select cursor layer, open Transform tab, Position, select all keyframes of the property and open Graph Editor. Right-click and select Edit Speed Graph. As you can see, speed graph is linear. That means that all our movements happen with constant speed. And that's not cool. Close Graph Editor, select all keyframes of Position property again, press F9, and see that all keyframes change their form from romb to sandglass. Open the speed graph again and it's different now. The speed smoothly rises from 0, then reaches its maximum value in the middle of movement, and smoothly slows down to 0 again. Let's edit speed graph. Tilt the first graph to the left to make the movement accelerate earlier, and the second to the right to make the acceleration of the second movement smoother. Edit movement path a little bit. Fine. Of course, we can always do our animation better by editing speed graphs, movement paths, design, and so on, but for the first lesson, it's enough. It's always a total routine to open Transform tab of a layer in searches for animated properties, especially when you have really big amount of layers on a timeline. Let's have a look at hotkeys which allow you to open the layer transformation properties. A is for anchor point. B, it's for position. R is for rotation. D is for opacity. And S is for scale. Everything is pretty easy. To open several of them, hold Shift and push any of property hotkey. For example, open position using P and press Shift S to open scale properties simultaneously. To open only animated properties, press U. Let's talk about other hotkeys. Ctrl D calls the duplicate command. Can be applied to all things, starting from layers on a timeline, finishing with the objects in project panel. You can move the layers on a timeline using square brackets. Square brackets with holded Alt allow you to trim a layer. Hotkeys B and N help you to trim the work area. Hit Enter to rename the layer. Your homework is to animate a pattern of geometric shapes. Here are some examples. The main task for you is to create this using animation of all basic transformations. So that's all for today, see you on the next lesson!